Hello and welcome back. This is episode 4 of A Brit's Guide to Fantasy NFL, and with week 1 only a few days away, I'm going to prepare you for exactly what you need to do each week and when in order to optimise your roster and be sure you don't miss out on picking up any of those breakout players. I'll start the week here at Thursday, since this is when the first game of the NFL week is always played. Thursday is a prime time game, which airs at around 8 PM East Coast US time or 1 AM Friday for those of us here in the UK. Before this game, you'll want to set your provisional lineup for the week. Importantly, Fantasy NFL is different from many other fantasy sports in that players do not lock into your lineup until they have played. So you only need to make sure that your Thursday night players are in the spot in your roster that you want them to be in. Are you starting them, or are you sitting them on your bench? This itself raises an important note about the flex position. Since you could play a running back or a wide receiver in this role, it is important that you don't use it with a Thursday night player, and ideally the flex should be the last player to play out of your starting lineup. Last minute injuries do happen, and you want to retain the flexibility to swap out that player for either a running back or a wide receiver, which only the flex position can do. After Thursday night, you get to the quietest part of the week, in which you have 2 days to consider your lineup, ready for Sunday. Sunday is of course the biggest day of the week. Make sure to check any last minute injury news before kickoff on Sunday. There are no automatic substitutions in Fantasy NFL, so it's best to avoid getting caught out by keeping up to date. Typically between 6 and 10 games will kick off 1 PM Eastern Time, 6 PM UK time. This is obviously quite hectic. And if you want to follow along, my personal routine is to watch Scott Hanson on NFL Red Zone, navigating you between all of the games without adverts and never missing a touchdown. Another 3 to 5 games will kick off around 4:30 Eastern Time, 9:30 UK time. These typically are games hosted by teams on the West Coast due to the time differences. A Sunday night primetime game follows these around 8 PM Eastern Time, 1 AM Monday morning UK time. Now on Monday morning itself, with just one game to go, you should either have won or lost already, or have only 1 or 2 players left to rely on. If you do, I hope you remember the advice from earlier and left them in your flex. If it's a really close matchup, you may have the opportunity to make a choice here about whether to start a steady player, say if you trail by 4 points, or a player with greater upside if you're down by 30. Of course, no UK-based fantasy player is really staying up to watch all of these, but the NFL publishes 10-minute highlights of each game to YouTube, which are usually available by the time our European alarm clocks go off anyway. Alternatively, full game highlights are available with a subscription to NFL Game Pass, so catching up on what you've missed is really very easy. For fantasy football, you can break down the week into 2 chunks. First, you have the game week itself, running Thursday night through to Monday, which we've just covered. Then you would be forgiven for thinking the other half of the week, Tuesday to Thursday, is not as important. But this is where you can actually make a real material difference to your team. You should use Monday and Tuesday to catch up on the events of the weekend and read up on the expert opinions of strong performances from players who may have gone undrafted in your league. Having a podcast to listen to on your commute is possibly the easiest way to get this information without investing hours of your time. On Tuesday evening, you will need to submit all of your waiver claims. These are the players you would like to add to your team this week and who you want to drop. The waiver claim process is a little complicated, so I will cover it in a dedicated episode next week. In the early hours of Wednesday morning, waivers will clear. This is where the computer assesses each team's claim on undrafted players and accepts or rejects as appropriate. Your work on waivers isn't quite done yet though, as your league mates will have just dropped a large number of players and there may be some gems in there that have been cut far too rashly. Joe Mixon was a player last year dropped mid-season in many leagues, only to bounce back to a valuable fantasy player in the back half of the year. This is also the best time in which to propose trades to your league mates, since everyone knows who they've got on waivers and no players are going to lock in until at least Thursday night and probably not until Sunday. Now, before you start to relax, it's time to set your lineup in time for the next Thursday, and on the cycle goes all the way to the end of week 16 and hopefully your fantasy championship. I hope you enjoyed this episode of A Brit's Guide to Fantasy NFL. Next week, to get you ready for the first post-week 1 waivers, I'll be dedicating an episode to waivers and streaming. Please do subscribe to the channel if you would like to see that, and good luck for week 1.